Hey, I asked some people on this last election if the names on their ballot were the same names for president that were on my ballot when I went to go vote. The answer is shocking because the answer was no, it was not. Depending on what state they were in, we all saw different names apparently. It was time to look into this. Let's do this. The ballot for the presidential election where you voted is not the same everywhere. We need to ask, why? So when someone goes to run for an election, like the president in each state, there's different requirements in order to apply and have your name actually on the election ballot. And all these rules are different for each of the 50 states. Some of the differences, there are filing fees upon turning in your name to be on that ballot. You have to petition and get a number of signatures to be on that ballot, and those are different per state. And a matter of fact, a third party, if they want their name on the ballot, has to collect up a total of 885,000 signatures just to apply and have their name on a ballot. But the two main parties, Democrat and Republican, they don't have this requirement at all. Their names are just automatically on the ballot. So I've put a list together of some of the variations between the states and the rules it takes to have your third party name or your name on a ballot. Now, the Libertarian Party was a very popular party for this last election, so we're going to use them as an example for some of the what they had to go through to put their name on the physical ballot. So the example Libertarian Party. There are two states in the United States that say that if you get enough write-in candidates to equal 0.5% of the population of the state that voted, then they will get your third party or your name on the ballot. They'll print it there on the next election. So there are two states, that's Michigan and New Mexico. So if the third party, any third party, but Libertarian, if they got 0.5% of people to vote for them on this election, then they will put whoever is running for that party on the ballot next election. That's just those two states. Let's go over some more. So these 5 states, Kansas, Maryland, Nevada, Oregon, and Wisconsin, they have that same rule like the previous states, except their requirement is 1%. If the third party or your name can get enough write-in candidates to vote for them that is equal or above 1% of the entire population that voted, then they say, good job, we will put your name, whoever runs for your party, on the ballot next time around. In addition to those 5 states, there's 2 other states. Well, Oregon was on the other list because Oregon and Connecticut, if they say if you get 1% of the people in those states to vote for you, not only will they put your name on the ballot the next time around, they'll put it on the ballot 2 times away from now. So it'll be the 2018 and the 2020. They'll keep putting them on there. So I know that presidential elections are 4 years apart, but there's other elections, Senate and things like that may take place in between. So they will put your name on the ballot for the next 2 elections. So this is the 2% level. There's only one state at this level, and that's Iowa. And Iowa says if you can collect up 2% of all the people that voted, they'll put your name on, or whoever your party is, on the ballot next time around in 2018. So Iowa was only for giving access for the next election. But at the 2% rule, Kentucky, Missouri, Montana, North Carolina, and Utah, they say not only for this election, but the next one as well. So there's 2 more states. There's Oklahoma and Washington, D.C. That's not a state, I know. But those 2 areas, they require that the person or the third party get 2.5% of the people that voted. And then they'll promise that, hey, if you get 2.5% of our state, then you can have your name or your party's name on the ballot next time around in 2018. Now we're going to have a couple of 3% situations here. So at 3%, there's Arkansas, Idaho, and Massachusetts. These 3 states, they require the 3% rule. You got to collect just like the others. You got to be able to get 3% of the voting population to vote for you or your third party, And then they say, good job, you didn't win the election, but you did win putting your name on the ballot next time around in 2018. The other part of the 3%, not only did that, those states say you can have your name on the ballot in 2018, Ohio says that you can have it for the next 2 elections. And then Alaska that says just for the presidential in 2020, you can have, you're already on the ballot for then, if you were able to make their 3% rule in those states. Now we're going to skip, there's no 4%, so we're going to skip to the 5%ers. So these 3 states say you got, as your third party, your Libertarian Party, or if you're just a person, you have to get 5% of the state to vote for you. And if you can do that, then these states, North Dakota, Tennessee, and Texas, will actually put your name or your party's name on the ballot for the next time around in 2018. The big addition to the 5% rule is these additional states: Arizona, Louisiana, Minnesota, Nebraska, Rhode Island, and of course the actual state of Washington, say that not only will they put your name on the ballot the next time in 2018 for your party, they'll also put it the next time around in 2020 as well. Check this out. I mean, it adds up to 30 states in all. 30 states with these different percentages have different rules that said if you can get the vote of those different percentages in those different states, then they will give you your name on the ballot the next time, or maybe the next 2 times. 30 states have these rules, but that's not all of America. Let's take a closer look at some of these states all the way across. You have the 5% group. You have the 1% group. You have the 2% group. Here's the 2.5, only a couple of them. The 3% group is there. And finally, the larger list of the 5% group. Of course, adding up to the 30 states that will give you something if you make these percentages. Now, there are 13 states. These are some 13 right here that don't have any benefits at all. They just have massive requirements that are even more than what you seem like these percentages. But you have to do it each and every time that you try to run for an office if you're not a Democrat or Republican. If you're like yourself or a Libertarian, third party, anything like that, you have to go through the hurdles each and every time. 13 states have no special benefits at all, like getting yourself on the ballot automatically for the next election or the next 2 elections or something. So that only leaves 17 states. These states, their requirements are higher than the 5% that we were talking about, and their fees to pay them are higher than everyone else's. In other words, it's more difficult in the remaining 17 states to get a name that's not a Democrat or Republican on the ballot. It costs so much, they have more signatures, and you have to get more of the vote. So let's take Georgia, for example. We were talking about 0.5% or 1% up to 5% for some of these other states. Yeah, Georgia, 20% of the popular vote has to go to you or your third party that you're running for. And then the filing fee that you have to pay is 3% of whatever the salary is for the President of the United States that year. Really, Georgia? So this past election cycle was actually not a defeat for the Libertarian Gary Johnson, who threw himself a victory party for him and his supporters. Because the last time they were in the presidential election, they only received 1% of the vote. And this year, so far, and votes still come in, but they were at 3.2%. So they tripled their popularity by being on the ballots from last time. People saw names or alternatives. Those names would not have been there had they not qualified in some states to put their name on the ballot. So in a previous video, when I was going out to vote, I did a quick overview to find out how many parties there were other than just Democrat and Republican. I mentioned in the video there were 13, and there were 13 that I could find that day. But when making this video, I actually found that there are 28 actual parties. Granted, there were still 495 people running for president that you could write a name in, but I found 28 legitimate parties, and I figured I'd show them to you here. And the numbers there are the states that recognize those parties, and the number of states that will put that name of that party on the ballot. So in some states, you'll see Democrat, Republican, Green Party, Libertarian, but in other states, you'll have Democrat, Republican, Americans First Party. I mean, we didn't all see that. Only one state saw that. And some of these states, other states only saw Democrat, Republican, maybe like the Libertarian Party, and then the American Elect Party. So the ballots did not look the same for all the Americans that were voting this year. So this is a list of the states of the United States, and those numbers that are next to it are the signature requirements for you as a write-in or you as a third party that wants your name, not a write-in, that wants your name to be physically printed on a ballot. Not the Democrat or Republican. All this stuff does not pertain to the two main parties. It's only the third parties or people that want to see their name physically on the ballot. So in these states, and the numbers next to them are the number of signatures that they have to turn in with the money and the application by a certain time in order to be considered to put their name on a ballot. Notice these two states. This is California and Florida. A person that wants to see their name printed on the ballot underneath Democrat and Republican have to collect up, in California, 178,000 signatures and 119 for Florida, and turn all the signatures in with their application and their money. It does not guarantee them a place on the ballot. It just says they met the criteria to put their name on the ballot, in which the election office then has to go over each one of the names to make sure they're not fake names like Mickey Mouse or Goofy or whatever. Once they validate all the names, then a person can have their name on the ballot. Although those two other states were the highest requirements to have signatures, look at Tennessee. Tennessee only requires 275 signatures to turn in with your application and your money. You know how easy it is to check 275 signatures to make sure they didn't say like Mickey Mouse or some made-up cartoon character? Yeah, you'd be able to get your name on the ballot fairly quickly in that state. So that state has other party names on the ballot when Tennesseans go to vote. One of my favorite lines I heard from somebody was they do not vote for third-party candidates because no one votes for them. If you think about that for a second and ask yourself, are third party electable? It's because people like that aren't voting for third party because other people are not voting for third party. That's not how you vote. You vote like who you think is going to do a good job. So in 1992, Ross Perot ran and he got 19% of the vote. Even back then, Americans were starting to look at third parties instead of Democrat and Republican. And there must be a reason for that. There must be a feel that something's not right. So let's take a little closer look at something. Because it's more difficult for a third party to even be on the ballot, because they have to do signatures, and Democrats and Republicans do not. They have to pay fees. The main parties do not. And so there's all these requirements. They have to get a percentage of the vote. The main parties do not. But there is a presidential campaign fund in which the U.S. government gives money to the candidates to run their campaign. That's right, they do. So not only do everybody's donation gets to it, the U.S. government gives people money based on how they did in the last election. So that's very important to know. The third parties do not get any of this money, because you have to get at least 5% of the vote to get any of it. So if you don't make 5%, you don't get anything, and you have to do your campaign strictly on the donations of the people that are supporting you. And here's the reason why I'm using the Libertarian Party, because historically they have done what they needed to do to put their name on a ballot so many times in a row that this year the Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson was on all 50 states. So because it's YouTube and I don't know who's listening to this, you all saw Democrat, Republican, and Gary Johnson for the Libertarian Party, no matter what state you were in, because he was on all 50 states. All those 28 other parties, there was one state that had one, another was another. So I'm using Libertarian because whoever's listening to this is going to understand the concept because they saw that name there as well. So anyway, they raised $2.5 million from their supporters to put on a campaign. So if he would have ever got 5% of the vote, the 5% allows the government to give this guy, or give whoever third party, $9.5 million extra dollars. A $12 million campaign for a third party guy looks a lot different than a $2.5 million campaign. The goal of some of these guys are not necessary they want to win, of course, that's their problem, but they're going to win over time. But what they want to shoot for first is to win at least 5% so they can have a piece of the campaign funds that the government gives them, so they can tack it on to their donors and make a big pot that they can go out and really do the same type of campaign that the Democrats and Republicans could put on, because they get all of their money plus the campaign fund. Let's get back to the video. I'll see you in a second, and we'll wrap this up with some closing thoughts. So as we've learned, the Democrat and Republican Party are on the ballot for all the states. Libertarian achieved the ability to be on the ballot for all the states, but there are 28 other parties that are trying to do the same thing, and they only achieved to meet the criteria to be on the ballot in some of the states. So depending on where you lived, you saw Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, and one of those other 28 party names. We didn't see them where I was. You didn't see them where you are, but we all saw different ones underneath there, because each state has its own criteria on what it takes to have your name on the ballot. Very interesting. It's a hard thing to understand. I'm sure they have a whole team of people to help a candidate run for president in order to understand all the variations in each state and how much things cost, and you got to raise all the money. This is a difficult thing for someone to run for president from a third party. That's all I'm saying. It's been educational, and we're going to learn more each election cycle. Have a good day.